Please rise for the arrival of the official party.
Please be seated. Good evening, Brigade and distinguished guests, and welcome to those who are joining us for the 2012 Naval Academy Leadership Conference. Tonight, it is my honor to introduce our Forrestal Speaker, General James N. Mattis, United States Marine Corps, Commander, U.S. Central Command. General Mattis has commanded at multiple levels, including the 1st Marine Expeditionary Brigade, 1st Marine Division, U.S. Marine Forces Central Command, NATO Supreme Allied Command Transformation, and U.S. Joint Forces Command. As the commander, U.S. Central Command, he oversees operations alongside our allies, partners, and friends in critical, important regions of the world. CENTCOM is engaged throughout the greater Middle East and South Central Asia across the full spectrum of warfare, standing against violent aggression and the tyranny of militant extremists, while contributing to the broader conditions for peace, stability, and prosperity. Please help me give a warm welcome to General James N. Mattis.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, midshipmen, and thank you, Admiral Miller. Thank you, Captain Clark, and for the midshipmen. I know it's been a very long day, and so we got to get something out of the way, I think, right up front here. First of all, it is an honor and a privilege to come to get to talk to you here, because after some of the things I've said in public, it's a privilege to be invited to any polite company anymore to give a talk, okay? But there's one other point. There's one other point I need to get clear on here. Now, I'm told it's a Naval Academy tradition, and we all know what tradition means in the naval service, but it's a tradition at these events. Some bold midshipman is going to ask me to give a weekend, grant you a weekend. Right. Well, as some of the older people here know, I've always been a fan of liberty. However, I have two different speeches here. I have one speech that is the 2-hour version, and I have one that is the 20-minute version. Now, if you laugh at all of my jokes, if you applaud wildly at the right times, then you get the 20-minute version, and you also get the Liberty Weekend, okay? It's obvious we have a very bright couple of classes here, since you've already picked up on the important things. But the point I would let me just talk for a little bit. I'm supposed to at least partially seriously to you here this evening, because we are in a serious job. We're in a serious age, and I think it's important that those of us who've been moderately successful in these careers come back and talk to you all, like run the elevator down, give you some lessons we learned, and bring you up the same way that our predecessors brought us up. And I think that I'll talk for a little while, my fine young midshipmen, talk for a little while, kind of close the gap between us, give you some nuggets to chew on maybe, and certainly something for the Q&A where you can challenge me. And we'll go back and forth a little bit. And I need to understand what's on your mind, because I want to come out of here a little better off for this evening, as do you. But if you get done listening before I get done talking, you just wave your hand and we'll go to question and answer early. And then you can get set back 1 year and you can think about it for doing that. But I understand you're going through a leadership conference right now focused on navigating through uncharted waters. And frankly, I'm very happy about that, because one thing I can guarantee you, when I send young officers off to the Central Command region, you will go through uncharted waters. No matter how well we train you, you're going to have to fall back on your education as you chart your own course out there. And along the way, you're going to enjoy some riotous excursions of the human spirit. You are going to learn things about yourself. You are going to be privileged beyond those who took the easy route, who did not come to Annapolis, who did not take the hard road, and you're going to learn things that are going to make you feel so privileged the rest of your life, whether you stay in the Navy for 5 years or you stay in the service like I have for over 40 years. And there is a message I want you to take away tonight, and that is that despite the best laid plans you're going to make, and you're going to do a wonderful job at making plans, surprise is going to come along, and when those surprises hit, and when they do hit, and they'll hit hard, you can only fall back on your ingenuity and your education, your character, and certainly you're going to have to fall back on your resolve. And it's going to be your education and your self-discipline, my fine young midshipmen, that allows you to weather the storms that you're going to go through. And as long as you don't sell yourself short, you keep up with the traditions, you don't fall out of this difficult program, and it is a very difficult program. I was the executive officer of the Naval Academy of Prep School for 3 years. I know what you're going through. If you keep the faith in yourself, if you remember the only one thing you control in this world is how you respond to what happens to you. You don't control anything else. And some people will respond well, and some people won't, but it's all up to you. Just remember that's the only thing you control. But if you stick with yourself, if you choose this responsibility of the naval service, if you remember, you've joined the varsity. This is the varsity, make no mistake about that. Then you're going to find that when destiny taps you on the shoulder and you think, it's never going to happen to me, I'll never be a 4-star standing in front of the Brigade of Midshipmen. But when it does, because you've stayed true to yourself, then it won't find you wanting when the day comes. And your country is going to need you in these dangerous times. You know, I went to school in the last millennium. That's when I was in college. You know what I mean? And the reason they keep some of us gray-haired guys around is because it's not our first war, our second war, our third war. We've been doing this for a while. But back when I was in college, there was a rock and roll band out, and it was called Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young. And only some of these people over here will recognize it. And you can listen to it now on public radio because no private station can make a profit playing the records. But they had one line that I paid very little attention to at the time, and it said, when you're on the road, you must have a code that you can live by. And I will tell you, my fine young midshipmen, that you come of age in a time of wonderful challenges. There's nothing to be feeling sorry about these days in this great country that you and I call America. But in these great challenges that you're going to face, and we are going to need every one of you in the years ahead if we're going to protect this country, you're going to be going on the road for the rest of your lives, and you're going to need that code. And a point I would make very strongly is that we need naval leaders who can live by an ethical code, who don't have to look over their shoulder to see if they're being watched, but do the right thing because they're young men and women of character. And if you can come out of here with that hardcore inside you, then there is nothing you need ever fear. Because you can write this code using other people as signposts, but it's got to be an authentic you. It's got to be yours. And there are people from John Paul Jones to Geronimo, from General Marshall to Martin Luther King Jr., of course, George Washington, Ben Franklin. There are any number of people you can turn to and get their ideas of how did they live their life. But believe me, an awful lot is going to be riding on your young shoulders in very, very little time. Very soon it's going to be on your shoulders. And it's not all that difficult to write this, but if you don't do it, you're going to be like some bit of algae out in the ocean just swinging back and forth with the current, turning one way, turning another. And that's not a way for a man or woman to live. That's the way a boy or a girl lives, not a grown man in a free country, not a grown woman who's leading. So we need leaders who can think and lead ethically, who lead disciplined but unregimented problem-solving approaches. And I mean by that, you cannot be so regimented by our military that you become myopic. You need to be disciplined but unregimented, or you're going to find yourself always having to react to an enemy that's going to steal a march on you. We need young officers who can make a positive impact, because having joined the varsity, I will tell you that as a senior officer, I've got responsibilities to the young sailors, Marines, soldiers, airmen, Coast Guardsmen. And one thing we will always be satisfied with is when you give us 100%. You give us 100%, when we get done training and educating you, you can stand the strain. But we will be totally dissatisfied if you give us 99%. This is not the junior varsity. This is not a place where we somehow moderate our commitment. You must be willing to give it all, because the people underneath you who will salute you, they are going to give it all. Now, for many of us, it's often in the service of others that we really find our purpose in this life, and there's a reason for it. None of us are no man's an island. We're not made to live up on some mountainside in a cave alone. But we've got to have an impact on others' lives and our own lives that permits us to learn things about ourselves, I mentioned earlier, to really learn things about yourself. And you will not spend your time at age 40 laying on the back on a couch explaining to somebody how your life didn't make a difference. And right now, you're young, you think, of course my life's going to make a difference. But in fact, an awful lot of people take the easy road. And when you take the easy road, the only thing it has to commend it is that it's easy. There's nothing else to it. There is nothing else if you take the easy route. And if you start running the ethical sidelines, when you do step out a little bit, you'll be out of bounds. You've got to run down the middle of the field ethically, and you've got to keep yourself there, and that means you have to discipline yourselves. Because if you don't discipline yourselves, then others are going to have to discipline you, and that's generally we call a boy or a girl, not a man or a woman. The biggest danger to our young troops today, the biggest danger they face today is not from the enemy. I assure you that when you look at your sailors and Marines and point to them, and you point toward the enemy, every time they will get up and move against the enemy. And I tell you that, and I've been in that situation many times, and they will not hesitate. The biggest danger is not the enemy. We just try to keep the butcher's bill as low as possible. And that comes down to your skill, your tactical cunning, and the way you lead, your coaching ability. The biggest danger that I find today would be a leader who would blunt the initiative or enthusiasm of their sailors and Marines out of some sense they have to control people in a negative fashion. And so we're looking for we're looking for officers who can win not just the trust and respect of their subordinates. I'm going to use another word very specifically. We're looking for officers who can win the affection of their young troops. Because when people are getting shot down around you, if you cannot win the affection of your young troops, they will have a very difficult time when the Grim Reaper's standing there at the door responding to you. And I've often wondered, when I was a younger officer and right up until today, why is it that I can see one platoon of 41 Marines and sailors perform better in training or in combat than a company of 200? Why is it there's such a difference? And every time it comes down to one thing, the unit leader. It comes down to that unit leader. It's not like we selected special people to be in that unit. They're basically all the same. So we're looking for officers who do not give up 1 ounce of their authority, although they share it. They share their authority liberally, but they don't give up 1 ounce of their authority over that unit. You're not there to be a friend, and notice I used the word affection, not popularity. That's not the same thing. All of you signed on after 9/11, so you come into the Naval Service today with the absolute respect of every one of us who was in the service before then. You knew what you were getting into, you knew it was a war, and you came anyway. You looked past the hot political rhetoric that swirls around our wonderfully passionate country, and you marched in anyway, and you know you're going to put up with danger, you're going to put up with discomfort, and you know, and I know, we could all make a lot more money doing something other than being in the Naval Service. But the fact is, you came in and you automatically get the respect of your seniors. And it's important that you never lose that respect, and that means you must take care of those troops, you must hold them close to your hearts, because they are the beloved sons and daughters of America. And if at any point you sense that that's going away, you have to have the guts to say, I don't belong here, because it's just too critical. And I carry in my pocket the list of next of kin letters that I send out every day, and I've got them here for as many as I've sent out. And it's a reminder that in order to defend this country, we are going to put young men and women in harm's way. We're not a life insurance corporation, but they are counting on you to know how to do trigonometry in a hurry. They're counting on you to have read your doctrine. They're counting on you to spend their lives with a sense that you will not give up on one of them if there's any possible way to bring them back in one piece. And the reason I bring this up is you're going to hear a lot about tactics. You're going to study how to bring that airplane in at night and drop bombs. You're going to learn how to bring that ship alongside for an UNREP at sea. You're going to learn all those things, but ultimately you only have to win one battle, and that battle is for the hearts and minds of your young sailors and Marines. If you win that battle, they'll win all the other battles for you. And if you don't win that battle, then you get one of those brittle units, and then you've got problems, big problems. Sometimes you can sit and wonder how you're going to behave when you go into combat. The point I would make to you is, and a number of your shipmates here have been in combat because we've been fighting for 10 years and they've been overseas and now they're in the academy, but you will react fine. And you say, how can you know that? You've never met me. Yes, I have. I know every one of you because I know the kind of people who would give up the easy road and come in to this program. I know the program. I've fought alongside enough Naval Academy graduates. And if you keep the faith in yourself, you'll do fine in combat. Do not worry about that. Remember this, there is nothing you will face that will be worse than Midway. There's nothing you'll face that's worse than Guadalcanal. There's nothing worse than Shiloh. There's nothing worse than Iwo Jima. So no matter what happens, it's going to be easy. I'll give you an example. I commanded the 1st Marine Division, about 25,000 sailors and Marines. I got the word we had to attack a city called Fallujah back in 2004. It was going to be a very tough fight, and we knew it. It eventually, over 2 battles, that each battle lasted weeks, it cost us over 600 of our beautiful young sailors and Marines killed and wounded. And the night before the first assault, I went down, I was checking on the 2 assault battalions, and then it's about midnight, time for generals to get out of the way and fall back and leave it to the infantry that then do it. Infantry got their name, infant soldier, young soldier, and they're all very, very young. And as I was falling back with my half-dozen radio operators about a mile to get to my vehicles, we were walking along the line of departure. And we were behind a company that was laying in the very chilly ground, stripped down to their combat gear. They were quite cold. And the enemy created some mischief nearby, so I got my guys down and I walked over to the corporal and told him we were there. He said, no sweat, General, we'll take care of this, just take us a few minutes. And eventually they did take care of it. And this was an assault company that would attack about 20 minutes before the rest of his battalion in order to seize a railroad station outside the city. This would allow the rest of the battalion to move up without coming under fire. And most of these guys, most of these young men were going into their first fight. And as we were sitting there making certain it had all died down, one of the young men asked his corporal, his squad leader, who himself was probably not old enough to buy alcohol legally. The little buggers probably found a way to do it when they're home. And the young man said, Corporal, you think Fallujah's going to be real bad? And we've got ladies here tonight, so I'll clean this up slightly. But he said, hush and get some rest. We took Iwo Jima. Fallujah won't be nothing. My point to you is, my fine young leaders, it doesn't start with you. It will not end with you. You're here to pick up the tradition and carry it on, and understand that when you're laying on your belly, getting ready to go into your first fight, and you're shivering from more than just the fact that it's cold, when you're laying there like that, the tradition of the Navy will come in, and it will give you strength that right now, as we sit here in this beautiful school, is hard to understand. But that strength will carry you through, and knowing what you've been through, how we've brought you up in this academy, I have no doubt you will be just fine in combat. You're going to have to be able to deal with uncertainty without getting upset about it. You're going to have to be able to deal with it in a way that's positive and not lose your cool, not lose your grace. You're going to have to make certain that your passion for excellence with your unit, and you should try to make your ship's crew the best there is. You should try to make your squadron the best it is. You should try to make your company the best in the world. That's how you save lives when you go into combat. But at the same time, don't let that passion for excellence outweigh your compassion for those young men and women who are going to put their lives on the line for you. You must maintain that understanding, that human understanding. And you must be able to take war's grim realities on one hand and take human aspirations on the other and bring them together, or if you cannot, because of how grim the situation is, to keep them in balance. Because there are going to be times we are going to demand from you, literally in the same hour, a high degree of chivalry and a high degree of violence at the exact same time. And you're going to have to sort it out, and you're going to have to do it in a way that makes sense to your subordinates. So instead of post-traumatic stress syndrome, they come out with post-combat growth, and you can do this. I have seen people come out of the most difficult combat as better human beings, as more compassionate human beings, and you're going to create harmony. You're going to create harmony in your units if you're good at your job. But remember this, if you're going to direct an orchestra, you're going to have to turn your back on the crowd, and you're going to have to bring out the best in everybody you're directing. You know what I'm driving at? You see what I mean? That means you're going to have to turn your back on a lot of things that at times you think a lot of people believe in, and in fact they don't. There are things like ease of life and taking the easy route and that sort of thing. So you're going to have to create a harmony. At times it's going to be a vicious harmony as you close in on the enemy. It should be a vicious harmony when you close in on the enemy. And you're going to have some of the best days and the worst days of your life in the naval service. That's a reality. I'm not going to patronize you and tell you it's all wonderful. But if you can keep your sense of humor, if you can remember it's actually a lot of fun to get shot at if they miss you, you know, it doesn't bother you at all then. But if you can keep your sense of humor, you'll get through it. I'll give you an example. On one day, I walked down and there was a squad of Marines, about 8 to 9 Marines in a street in a town called Ramadi, and they were shooting down the street this way, the enemy shooting back up the street this way. It's about as bad as a Texas picnic, you know what I mean? Everybody's getting, you know, mixed up there. And I walked up behind them, and I'm sure the corporal that I walked up behind was convinced he had a problem when I came up, and in the long and illustrious history of the Marine Corps, I asked the single most inane question any corporal in a firefight has ever been asked. I walked up behind him, I said, "Hey guys, what's going on?" He was convinced that somewhere a village had lost its duty idiot and was running amok, I'm sure. And he drops his rifle down for a minute from his shoulder, and he looks over his shoulder at me and he said, "Well, General, we're just taking the fun out of fundamentalism over here, okay?" But let me tell you, besides, it got the same smile on my face it brought to yours. But here was a young man in about as difficult a situation as you can imagine, and he was keeping his sense of humor, and a person like that who can take his job very seriously, very lighthearted about himself, about what he was actually in right then. And I can walk away knowing that this is a young man who's got his balance. There's going to be ethical performance by him. And believe me, that is what we need from these young guys. The sense of humor actually becomes like a flak jacket around your heart. Sometimes it's a very rough sort of humor. I've seen a gunny tell a young man who was very badly wounded. He just was joking with him saying, "Boy, I'll tell you, Jerns," name was Jerns, he says, "You sure screwed up your health record this time, young man," you know. And the kid kind of smiled a little bit. He was in a lot of pain, and somehow the gunny had just taken a load right off the young man, and you could just tell the color was coming back into his face. And the gunny there who'd seen it all and done it all, that shows the kind of leadership, the shock absorber you can give them as long as you're willing to give everything you've got. I think that I want to wrap this up because I'm really interested in getting to your questions early here tonight rather than talking for too long. But you're preparing to enter the best Navy in the world, and the Marine Corps is the finest small army in the world. And there's a fighting spirit in the Naval Service that you are going to be forever proud of. It's a national treasure, the Naval Service is. It's something that's the envy around the world, and you're going to carry in usufruct. That means you've got to take this on board yourself, and you've got to turn this over to the people who will sit in this auditorium some years from now in as good a shape as you got it or better. That's your responsibility. And you are young people with an awful lot of character. I've got over 40 years of wearing this uniform, and frankly, the only reason I stick around here is the chance to serve alongside you folks. I feel sorry for people who never got the chance to serve alongside you and your shipmates out in the Gulf right now, up in the mountains of Afghanistan, in Norfolk, San Diego, and in every one of the 7 seas. I think your future is very, very bright. I will tell you that our history is not all that long. I had an old veteran tell me once that, you know, General, the Revolutionary War veterans were just passing away as the Civil War was getting ready to go. And the Civil War veterans, the last of them died in the 1930s. And of course, we know that the World War II veterans, we're losing them today, but they're still with us. My point is, we're a very young country, and all we are is an experiment. That's all America is. We call it America. In fact, it's an experiment. And the only way it's going to survive to be passed on to the next generation is if we have young men and women, macho, ethical, rambunctious at times, yes, but with a deep sense of personal responsibility for their own conduct. And if you pass this country on in good shape, then it'll continue to be the special country, the beacon that it has been for the last several hundred years. Because for us, we were born free by complete accident. We were just born here. We live free because it's our choice. You chose to live here. You're free. But it's our obligation to turn it over to the next generation in as good a shape as we got it. And that commitment will have to keep going, but remember, it doesn't begin with you, and hopefully, God willing, and your efforts involved there, it won't end with you. So stay authentic, take care of your troops. Think about how you want to convey your intent to your young folks. For example, I use touchstones. I stole one from the Hippocratic Oath, first do no harm. I told my young Marines, in order to tell them what kind of performance I wanted, if they saw some terrorist taken off across a crowded marketplace with women and children in it, don't take the shot. Wait another day, don't take a chance of hurting innocent people, hunt them down another day and kill them, but don't hurt one innocent person. That's one. So first, do no harm. Another one is no better friend, no worse enemy. You want to be friends, we'll be the best friends you ever had. But you take us on, it'll be your longest day, it'll be your worst day. Now, many of you say, but wait a minute, General, I've read about budget cuts, and I've read about cutbacks on this and that. Okay, let me just assure you one thing. When it's over and done with, we will still be the best in the world. We may do less, we're not going to do it less well. And when an enemy runs into us, it'll be their longest day, and it'll be their worst day, and that's your obligation. Because in an imperfect world, if we're not willing to fight for this, we will not have these freedoms. It's as simple as that. And so I look for your character, and I look for your leadership as you join our ranks. Again, we can use every one of you. We need every one of you badly who's committed to this. I think that the successes of those who fought, or the successors who fought at Midway and Tarawa, our enemies are going to learn they're not made of cotton candy, and your job is to make certain that lesson's brought home to them. And by your uncritical willingness to face danger, to fight ethically, and to keep our honor clean, you're going to gain another generation of freedom for this country and for the young people who will follow you. Now listen, I want to go into questions and answers. I've actually still got an hour and 40 minutes of that speech left here, okay? But we're not going to do that. We're going to switch over. And when I was commanding the 1st Marine Division for NCOs and officers, we want to see who had the initiative and aggressiveness to get promoted. So let's see who has the initiative and aggressiveness to challenge me here tonight, ask questions. Ask the first question. Who's got it?
Hello, sir. My name is Second Class Bowman, and I'm from Second Company. My question is, as the nature of warfare changes from state to group or culture, how can we keep our ethics and morals about us that you were speaking about earlier, while also fighting an enemy who plays by different rules and does not cherish the values, rules, and code of ethics of which we fight?
Yeah, wow. Excellent question. There's really two questions there. The fundamental nature of war has not changed a bit. It'll change about the time the fundamental chemical composition of water changes, okay? War is war, and its character changes somewhat, but its fundamental nature does not. Now, every war is different, and you got to take it, and you got to study each one so you're not fighting the last war. But how do you maintain your ethical balance when the enemy doesn't fight ethically? I think the most important point is that war is fought on three levels. It's fought on the physical, and you're right, the enemy does not fight the way we do. I mean, if we have every trooper over in Afghanistan right now knows that if they're captured, it's going to be very rough on them. And we've seen our wounded killed by the enemy, that sort of thing. So we define who we are by maintaining our ethical standards, because that's who we are, and we do not want the enemy to dictate to us our ethical standard. Whether they carry out the ethical standards or not is really immaterial. It's who we are, and I assure you there's nothing in the ethical standards that lessens the combat capability of your sailors and Marines. In fact, it will strengthen them, because if they start doing unethical things, it'll eventually, these rules were written because they're good for our spirits, and they're good for our hearts, and they're good for you 10, 20 years later. And if you violate them, you'll have a very tough time living with yourself. Furthermore, you'll make enemies right there on the battlefield. And we've seen on occasion when we had small unit discipline break down in our own forces, and we do hold people accountable for that, how it's helped the enemy in their lives about what kind of people we are. So you don't pay any concern with whether or not the enemy obeys the ethical rules. Us obeying the ethical rules will actually get more people on our side. I'll give you an example. Young Marine brings me a guy who has 2 hand grenades inside my division headquarters. He's a gardener, he's been working there for months. And he was given the 2 grenades and told to throw them into the mess hall. We had rather light security. It was Iraq early in 2004. It really wasn't as bad as it became later on. And so we asked the guy under interrogation, he brought him to the Marine who was guarding the work party out there, and said, why didn't you throw the grenades? Because they're going to give him $300 for each boom they heard inside the Marine camp. And he said, because the Marine yesterday stopped a guy from beating me up and gave me a bottle of water. A small ethical statement by a young Marine who saw something going wrong and stopped it. And how many Marine lives did he save? Now, he didn't have to step in to a fracas out in the street where we were letting people through the gate. He did it because it was the right thing to do. And as a result, Marines lived because of his ethical balance. I'll give you another example. A young Naval Academy company commander killed in action out at a place called Al-Qaim back in 2004. And this young captain, his body in a body bag was loaded in the back end of a Humvee for a 20-minute ride across the desert, where a Lance Corporal, and this is one of I knew this company, I knew all the company commanders, but he was beloved by his troops. They believed in him, they trusted him, they thought the world of him. And that vehicle, 20 minutes at night, by itself, back across the desert to deliver 2 prisoners and the body of the company commander. And that young Lance Corporal delivered them alive and unhurt. That's ethical performance right there. That's the way you turn out a force that can move against the enemy, and is not one that's disobeying orders, is not one that's losing its self-discipline, its unit discipline, that sort of thing. So you hold on to that ethical standard at times because you want to hang on to your sanity, you want to hang on to your unit discipline. That answer your question?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Sure. Okay.
He's a Marshall Scholar. He's a Marine. He's a very bright boy. Yeah. Sir Midshipman First Class Ian Cameron. I'm reading the Counterinsurgency Field Manual right now for class, and I'm supposed to plow through 100 pages of it before tomorrow. And General Amos has his name on the cover, but I know that you played a key role in its formation and execution. At the same time, I'm reading a lot of the strategic directives that are coming out, which suggest a shift to the Western Pacific, as well as a more high-tech warfare environment, especially focused on naval and air forces. In that kind of warfare environment, is this book still relevant?
Yeah, what a great question. It's a good book. I recommend if you can only read one chapter, do chapter 4. It will set you up real good, okay? Here's the thing, my fine young folks. Remember when I said surprise is going to be with you? That is going to be the one thing that characterizes what goes on? The United States is not in a position today to marry or adopt one preclusive form of warfare, because the paradox of war is, if you adopt one form of warfare, then the enemy will say, I know where their perceived weakness is, and I'll move against that. So what we're going to have to do is maintain our nuclear superiority, behind which the international community draws great benefit. We're going to have to maintain our conventional capability, and we're going to have to make counterinsurgency a core competency of the U.S. military. Because you cannot say we're not going to fight a certain kind of war. Remember, the enemy gets a vote. So read the book, make certain that you understand that when you go into a fight, you must look at it and take it on its own unique fight. Don't try to make it match something else. At the same time, every bit of history you've read will come back to help, and that book will help. And if you read chapter 4, you'll notice it says you have to set the problem is one of the first things you do. That way, you don't start solving the wrong problem. If you don't figure out what the problem is first, and I don't care if you're in the Western Pacific fighting a conventional fight, a largely naval campaign, or on the ground in Afghanistan fighting a counterinsurgency fight, that's what the real message of that book is. That answer your question?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Okay, yes. One thing, you can see why you got to be very careful about believing in technology right there, okay? Because eventually war is a human thing, and you remember that technology is an enabler, and once in a while it breaks down. Go ahead, young lady.
Good evening, sir. Third class Chaperko. With the growing role of MARSOC and seeing how MARSOC is taking some very experienced Marines, what do you think the role in the line companies and effect it will have on line companies in the Marine Corps?
Yeah, MARSOC is a good outfit. They've got a lot of great Marines in it. I do not get a single complaint in the line. I was just up in Haditha Dam here a couple of weeks ago. I was out with young Marines up there at the head of the Helmand River Valley, and from sergeants and corporals, from gunnery sergeants and lieutenants, from majors and captains, there is not one concern about the eagerness, the capability of the Marines in those line units. Generally, the MARSOC guys are people on their second or third tour. They're very fine Marines. But believe me, if you ever watch a rifle company taking down an enemy post, you'll just be very happy you weren't on the receiving end of it. I have seen nothing but improvement each year in the capability of the Marine units out there. And part of this is one of the rough lessons of war, and you understand that, how you keep sharpening the steel because the war is going on like a whetstone, and it just keeps making your troops more cunning, more disciplined, more capable, more sure of themselves. I've seen nothing but improved capability, and MARSOC Marines don't stay there. They often rotate back, and when they go back to the units, they carry those special skills with them. They'll also be the first to tell you that while special operations can do many things, there are many things they can't do, and those fall to the line units. So I don't think it'll have any negative connotation. It's right now having only a positive. That may be somewhat a function of the war, but I suspect it'll continue even as we go to perhaps a less operationally intensive period. Okay?
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Okay.
Sir, First Class Lance, Third Company. What challenges and opportunities has CENTCOM been faced with following the volatility of the Arab Spring, especially in the area of U.S. security concerns?
Whoa. You know what we're seeing right now with the Arab Spring, the Arab awakening, is nations that have so long been able to not be responsive to their people have got to now. They've got to respond. And it's interesting that in many cases it was the ones that voted in people like Mubarak, that technically voted in, that have taken the biggest hits, whereas the Emirates and the kingdoms have shown to be pretty resilient, which means they're doing something right with their people. But anyone who says right now they know how the Arab Spring is going to turn out is fooling you. There are too many decisions to be made, too many political alliances to be put together, and it's really a revolutionary time. But I'll tell you this, it's never going back to what it was in the Middle East before. It'll settle out into a new harmony. It'll take years for this to happen. If I was to tell you what to watch and what we at CENTCOM watch, it's Egypt. Egypt with 25 to 30% of all the Arab people, the historic traditional center of learning, of religion, of culture, poetry, science. We're watching it very, very closely. What we, in terms of the security issues, what I keep very alert, whether it's going to be Arab nationalism, or is it going to turn toward a Salafist, medieval, the mumbo-jumbo guys out there who decide to run around talking about killing Shia or killing Sunni and killing everybody else. Right now, if the Sufi tradition holds in Egypt, I think that'll set the course for the rest of the Middle East. But we're watching it very closely. Of course, the Muslim Brotherhood and the Salafists took about 71% of the parliament. That could be because they were the most organized, but we'll just have to watch how it unfolds now they're in power. It's too early to tell. We just watch it closely. We listen to our friends, and I go out, I'll be back out there here in a couple of days, and we get very, very good advice from people out there in the region that we've known for years, and even they say they don't know which way it's going to go right now.
Thank you, sir.
Sure, if you get it figured out, you come work for me, okay? Because I could use you. Yeah, okay.
Sir, Midshipman Second Class Sakamoto, does the restructuring of the Marines affect their ability to quickly respond in a significant manner to any major outbreak of hostility in the Middle East?
No, I don't think so. We had to go ashore into Iraq. We had to go ashore into landlocked Afghanistan. I mean, when there's a war, the Marines fight. That's all there is to it. They're also needed. But by putting us back on board ship, this is a region where I can't put large footprints ashore right now. There's a number of antibodies that immediately attach to us if we try to do it. There are countries over there that are very, very good allies for us, but because of the Palestinian-Israel disarray in the peace process, those countries cannot come out publicly and support us, which means I can't put Army units in many of those countries ashore. I can't put Air Force aircraft there. So the first thing that comes to mind when I've got a problem right now is where are the carriers and where are the Marines? That's what it comes down to. So no, in my region, if I were standing here 8 years from now, 5 years from now, I would be commanding a much more naval theater as we've now drawn out of Iraq, and we'll continue to draw down in Afghanistan as we push the enemy down and get the Afghan forces stand up, take their own country on. So we're going to be, percentage-wise, a significantly more Navy Marine theater, and that's just because I don't have the access that would allow me to use the other services quite so liberally. So it won't have any effect. I need every sailor and Marine we can put on board those ships right now.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Yeah. Okay.
Good evening, sir. Midshipman First Class Ramey from North Carolina State University. I'm going to ask a question I'm sure you've had 100 times, but as aspiring young officers, if there were any one quality for us to have when we commission, what would that be?
You know, my fine young midshipmen, we know we can trust you. We know you have an ethical, a moral framework, or you couldn't survive this program. So knowing you have integrity, I would say as a combatant commander, someone who I don't get into training and raising and equipping and funding and that sort of thing, I would just tell you it's audacity. I need young officers with the audacity and the initiative to take action and not sit there and say, well, I'm not in charge and I just walked into this place and it looks screwed up to me. I don't want to do anything about it because I'm not the person in charge. I want young officers with the audacity to see the enemy is starting to fall back and immediately have their people up and moving against them. I want ones with the audacity to step up when someone says, let's go do something, they know it's wrong, to say, no, we will not do that. And make certain, as much as your troops know what you stand for, that you have the audacity to ensure they know what you absolutely will not frickin' tolerate from them, so you don't allow them to get into a jam. You've got an awful lot of young, the kind of people who join the Navy and the Marine Corps are a bit rambunctious. They're not pantywaist, you know what I mean? And they need young officers whose heads are in the game and are really are down there with them. And you're going to have to be as physically tough as the toughest one down there. You're going to have to have done your homework, and we really need you to be out in front in terms of your initiative. But I would use the word audacity is what I'm really looking for. The ones who can really take charge, but do it in a way that coaches the young men and women to feel a sense of confidence, not that you're the know-it-all and the do-it-all. You're the coach who can bring them up. You're the player coach who can pick up a grenade and throw it as far as any of them. And if you're not that person, it's going to be really hard to, and you don't have that audacity to lead these young folks who are as aggressive as they are. So it took me a minute there because I had to really think about that one, young man. I almost had to do push-ups on you, you know? But, all right, thanks.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Sir, Midshipman Second Class Sadler, there appears to be a growing divide between the military and the servicemen and women. What do you see that we can do to reverse that trend and reunify us with the people that we serve?
A divide between officers and enlisted?
No, the American people as a whole, not just politics and the country as a whole, seem to be standing apart from the military.
Oh, I see. You know, it's interesting. When General Fulford, sitting over here, who graduated from the Naval Academy, was a young lieutenant, he probably would have been very uncomfortable walking through an airport coming home from Vietnam wearing his uniform. That's how alienated our military and civilians had become, where it was literally open contempt and disrespect. And I must add, it was both ways. Today, if you go down to Atlanta Airport and you see some young soldier coming off the airplane with his rucksack over his shoulder, you see civilians standing up and clapping for them as they walk through. I know I've heard about this, that it's gotten more distant, but now I've only been in the military for 40 years, but I'll tell you, I've never seen it so close. Now, there is an alienation in terms of what is going on in the numbers, and I think there you have a very good point. And here's what I do about it. I go out of my way to go to colleges, and I don't have that much time to do it right now, but in past jobs, I would go out of my way to go talk at colleges, go talk to Rotary clubs, that sort of thing. You've got to get out and communicate. And if you don't go out and communicate, and you'll find there are very eager audiences, by the way, if you don't go out and do that, then people can just get lulled into complacency. You know what I mean? You just get into your own little world. And I think that what's interesting is that we are completely honorable, and people recognize that. So when you show up there, even at places where you might expect hostility, I find it very easy to make connections with those people. But I think you've got to get more American military people out And I think it would be very helpful to have young NCOs and young officers get out there and talk more in their hometowns, in their high schools, in the clubs, in the service clubs, and that sort of thing. And just make sure we're communicating. We can't sit as a separate and distinct part of this society. But I know there's a smaller military than ever, but I sense that there's more of a, I'll give you an example. I'd go up and testify and in front of the Senate, and one senator would beat me up saying, this is the dumbest damn war, you know, why are we doing this? Another one would say, this is the right war at the right time and the right place. But when they were done with whatever their message was, they then said, General, what do you need? Both parties. Now, I'm a naval officer. I have got no politics. I am uninterested in it. Whoever the American people vote in, I will give a cheery aye. And if they tell me to go invade a country in a unilateral operation, I will do it. And if that president is President Clinton, he sends us to Bosnia, I will do it. If it's President Bush, he sends us to Iraq, I will do it. I believe in the Constitution. And that belief is something the American people need to hear from people who are wearing uniforms. And I think that's the way to connect with them, because we live, you live a more noble life already than most people will ever know. And you're young, and you're just trying to get through that book you got to read tonight when I get done bloviating up here. But the bottom line is, you have already challenged yourself to do something that will change you for the rest of your life for the better. And so get out and explain that to people. The American people, I will tell you, of all stripes, love everything you stand for. And the few who don't worry about it. Even Jesus of Nazareth had 1 out of 12 go to crap on him, you know what I mean? Who's next?
That's the last question, sir. If you could just say the last question.
Okay, they say this is the last question, but I outrank him, so if someone's really got a burning one, we'll do it. Go ahead.
Well, last question, no pressure then. Good evening, General. My name is Joel Wasserman. I'm here with the Leadership Conference from Tufts University. So it's the case these days that a very small proportion of the American population, born in the military and their families, bear almost exclusively the burden and the suffering necessary for the protection of our freedoms and the American lifestyle. And going back to your remarks on the previous question, what would you like to see the American civilian world, do to, I suppose, lessen this disproportionate burden on the armed services?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm going to take it a different direction than you expect. I think that even characterizing this as a burden, I'll just say I think it's an unfortunate choice of words. I honestly feel sorry for people who never came into this exuberant, high-spirited, selfless group and felt how high-spirited you could be working among young people who are willing to commit everything they've got, and you trust them with so much that you actually feel sorry for those who don't come in. Now, you make a good point. In the midst of all this, our families are brittle right now. They've seen repeated deployments of their loved ones, and they don't get any better as a unit deploys again and again, and the casualties come in. But I would tell you that to the naval service that holds the sense of accountability very high. There's been question about some of the military, do we hold leaders accountable? I think that question is not really asked of the Navy and the Marine Corps. What happens is, in our services, you realize that it's all about choice. And we're not victims, we make choices. And it's our choice to be here. I remember a Navy SEAL down in Bethesda who'd lost his legs. He said, if you're coming, he put a sign up outside his door in Bethesda. So if you're coming here to feel sorry for me or to cry or to express regret, don't even step inside. because that's not what this is all about. It's not a burden to do what we do. And I'm keenly aware, having been in as many fights as I have, of the grim cost of warfare. But I think if I wanted something from the American people, it would be a sense of understanding of how fortunate, how blessed they are to live in this country free, and to take advantage of it, to look past the acrimony that sometimes surrounds issues and find common cause with each other to take this country to where it belongs in terms of its concern for each other, its education of the young, its finding solutions to problems rather than fault with each other, and basically take many of the qualities that we look for in any service, I don't care if it's the priesthood or the military or teaching or medicine, and try to take those qualities and make them operant across society. But I assure you it's been no burden. It's been the most lighthearted thing I've ever done to serve alongside you all. And I know, is there anybody who's really burning up with another question here? Okay. No? Oh, looks like we got one. There we go. All right. Here's a man who's not up for popularity, you know what I mean? Go ahead.
Sir, Midshipman 4th Class Goodmanson, 16th Company. How many people are on that list in your pocket, and how do you deal with telling some kid's mom or dad that he got killed under your command, potentially because it was your fault?
Well, in the last little over a year, 647, to answer your first question. And how do you deal with it? First of all, my fine young midshipmen, you are going to lose people. You have got to accept that. It doesn't mean you accept it happily. It doesn't mean you accept it easily. It means you do everything you can to study, to do everything possible to have the air support there and have the artillery support, to have the medical support there. It means you take the risk yourself. But the bottom line is, if it's worth fighting for, if this country is worth fighting for, then eventually you have to put your young you have to put your young people into the fight. And as you do that, you have got to take responsibility for your role, but you will do your troops no good if you go into a funk about it. It's going to test your soul, it's going to test your spirit, it's going to test your faith. But what you have to do is you have to do the best you can, and then you have to let the chips fall where they may. Now, when you go to see the families, you have to be honest with them. In most cases, they're very proud, although they've just had the most heartbreaking thing in the world happen. There is nothing that will compare for them ever again. Their lives are changed forever. But if you believe in this country and what it stands for, this is what this nation has had to pay every generation to turn these freedoms over to the next generation. And it is for that purpose that we lost that person. When it's your own mistake, and I have made mistakes in combat, when it's your own mistake that caused it, you have to accept that failure and then reach down inside yourself and not allow it to paralyze yourself. Because if it does, you're going to put other sailors, Marines, soldiers, airmen into jeopardy. And you just do the best you can and make what best peace you can. And that's the best I can give you on it, okay?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay. My fine young midshipman, I think, do you have a question, young lady? No? Okay. No? All right. I need to let you all go. Thanks very much for your attention. I think you have to sing a song. I couldn't sing or dance, so I ended up in the infantry. Hope you're better than I am at singing. Thanks for tonight.
Thank you, sir. Already does send us back.
General Mattis, sir, thank you so much for coming. On behalf of the Brigade of Midshipmen, the Naval Academy Leadership Conference, and the Forrestal Lecture Series, This very attentive Brigade of Midshipmen would like to present you with a traditional gift that we have. And sir,
I believe they'd like you to try it on too.
Is that right? Okay. All right, you get that weekend, okay? You did it.
Thanks so much, sir. Really
You're welcome.
appreciate it.
Nice back.
if you all could please remain standing for the playing of Navy Blue and Gold. All please remain standing for the departure of the official party.
Oh, that's okay. You let them go first. I'm going to hang out here for a little while.
Vice Previous word, you're dismissed.